What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Monday Resultsdb show, going through Resultsdb on Rotogrinders here. We're going to show you that, go through a lot of the Millie Maker stuff from yesterday. Had a little sweat myself there. We'll go through that. We'll talk about everything there. Appreciate everyone that reached out. Golf doesn't really start till the final 3 holes, 9 holes especially, and it was a rough end for me, but got a little bit different guest on with me this week. You guys have seen me on them before, NBA shows, other PGA shows. My main man, Justin Carlucci, the Luch. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Tambo, I'm all right, man. You had a wild week. I was pulling for you. I saw Noto used his one time on you on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
I also gave you my one time, but I guess maybe we needed a couple more. But hey, sick build. The cards didn't fall, where they could have for you. But man, I'm sure you had a kind of roller coaster of a Sunday, and keep grinding away, man. We were definitely pulling for you here in northeastern Pennsylvania.
I appreciate that. Everyone was. I love to see it. When everyone comes out and supports you, cheers you on. I always wait till the very end because there's just so many things that can happen, as you saw, especially on a U.S. Open track. It's actually got to talk myself up a little bit, at least off of that. But I was telling you earlier, that's my 9th top 30. And most of those, 6 of them are top 19s or better. So in Millie Makers, my best being a 3rd in NFL. So I'm really trying to crack the code. Our main man, Head Chopper's got a couple of them. Some other guys we know around the industry, good dudes, all have some, there's lots of guys out there that have got it. It's a hard nut to crack. So always going after it, man, and have some fun with it. We'll definitely look at those builds. I think, it was crazy. The U.S. Open was awesome, right? It came right down to the wire. I don't give anything about, I won't even use the word, I don't care about anything talking about the course and how bad it was or how it could have been better if it was on a better course. I really don't. I just want to see the best players on the top of the leaderboard, and it makes it tough on everyone. The scoring is a little bit difficult, or enough difficult that it makes it exciting for all of us. And I think that's what we got. There was nothing that I could be mad about there. Poor Louis coming down the stretch again. And my buddy had said to me, I think he's going to bogey 16. And he left himself short on 16 and had to make a pretty decent sized par save there. And I said, oh man, maybe Louis is going to do this thing. Everyone had counted him out. And I guess rightfully so when you saw what he did with that tee shot on 17. And sure enough, it wasn't meant to be. How about the stones on Rahm though? Even on 18, having to click it out there. He doesn't want to go near the water, so he has to click it out that way, knowing he needs birdie still, hope that he can keep it up tight, and then be able to drop it. And just those 2 putts on 17 and 18 in general, even before that on 17. So what were your thoughts on the U.S. Open, all lineup stuff aside that we'll get to here in a second?
It was great. I cashed probably about 40 to 45% of my entries I put in the $100 millie, but wasn't profitable. You know how it is. I'd rather have one cash and it'd be a big one. But the builds weren't the worst, just didn't have kind of the right, pieces where they needed to be. I kind of took more of a stand in the middle where maybe I took the wrong one. I didn't have enough Paul Casey per se, and I didn't have enough of that chalk, and the chalk's been smashing and lately in PGA, and we'll get to that. And I think in a nutshell is a couple of months ago, we had someone, a Twitter follower say that I kind of look like Louis Oosthuizen, and which is fine. Maybe I do when I have my beard and kind of had a long day here. But we're sitting at the bar yesterday, my girlfriend and I, right before the great Sixers game, by the way, and we're seeing Louis walk on 17, and she's like, man, he's ugly. I'm like, yeah, PGA Twitter thinks I look like him. She's like, really? Yeah, it's all good. So it was just a hell of a weekend for Luch. And but hey, you live and you learn. That's why we have this review show, and there's plenty of takeaways we can make here. It was just it was very hard for anyone to get momentum, and you heard the announcers say that frequently. And that's one thing they were actually right about. There were plenty of times during this tournament where, we had 2.5 days of Richard Bland, right? That was fun while it lasted. There's always that journeyman, kind of the underdog, a feel-good story. Of course, then he fell apart, as many of them usually do. There was one point where I thought Bryson was so entirely locked in. He was like the Terminator, right? So Bryson had his momentum, and then it halted. There was a stretch of Rory, going into Saturday, Sunday. Rory looked good at times, awfully good at times. Didn't work out. So It was just kind of a game where who could hold up the most and avoid the kind of blow up holes here or there. And, John Rahm was pretty solid, throughout the remainder of the tournament. And, a couple guys really came to life late. Colin Morikawa, really disappointing Thursday, but played the next 3 days about as well as he could. And we talked about how good his approach game really has been compared to the field the last, 6 to 12 months. And strokes gained approach, we always, talk about how key it is. That seemed to be, to me, just the key statistic that trumped, against everything else for guys who finished in the top 25.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And take note, like U.S. Open, I've said this in the past, so I feel so confident coming into those weeks. I said it at the start of this week. Everyone said, man, you're some hyped up for this week. And maybe it was off previous results, but I always have a good feel about the U.S. Open. Again, I know it didn't completely pan out. We'll go into some of that in a second, but at the same time, the tee to green game is what's important, right? You'll see in my lineups, like it's Kawa, Casey, all these guys, and some let us down. A little sand in your eye can cause a quick withdrawal right quick for Mr. Victor Hovland. I thought he could take this thing down, and he couldn't. But even looking at Morikawa, really rough Sunday in the fact that he had a great start. I believe he hit the first 13 or 14 greens. He missed a 3-footer, a 6-footer. His eagle just whizzed by the hole by half an inch. Like anything to give me that momentum, I was looking for it. And my main build was a Rory Kawa lineup, as I like to call them. Those are sort of where I stack those two together, Rory, Morikawa. You got to get a couple of Rory Kawa lineups in there every now and again, and makes sense for how good they are. Rory, man, I felt like he could have won that thing just based on everything you said there, and it kind of just the double bogey threw him off. The bogey after that, his eagle just missed. So many putts, just couldn't get there. And then the Bryson thing is the prime example of why a lot of people said, like, how you taking the day after. I don't even care. Like, we just move on to the next one. I mentioned that I've been there before, and it does happen. It's a very tough tournament to close, and we'll get to some of the winning results here. But I would just say this, Bryson is the best example to look at. Like you said, thought he was winning the thing, locked in and dialed. People I saw, sitting in second and third place up there at the top with Bryson lineups that didn't even end up in the top 100 after the blow up and some of the other guys in their lineup as well. So let's dive into some of it here, Luch. We're not going to spend too much time today. It's a lot of the one you'll definitely see. The same guy won the $100 and the $10. Very interesting, actually, when we look at it in a second. But if you guys haven't joined us before, rotogrinders.com, you're heading over to PGA here, dropping down to Resultsdb. Whoops, dropping down to Resultsdb. Geez, now I need a login, I guess. Let's see here. Sorry about this, guys. As it does that. There we go. We're good. And then you're changing the date. You're just going to the Thursday that the tournament started, making sure golf is selected, clicking over to contests, and you've got your 10, your 100, the big 44-44. Shout out to Record 62. I saw he took it down. I know he's been grinding it out there, crushing lots of different things and picking up scores here and there, but to take down that Millie is quite huge. Didn't even need Rahm in that one. So I'm not sure we'll make it this far today. We are going to look at the 10 and $100, but I do want to show you probably the most interesting thing I noticed. I know Brian Jester out there posted, that it's, automatic first ballot Hall of Famer for winning 2 millies in the same day. Of course, with the same lineup, K. Milner, Jr., or Junior, if you will. Congrats to them. I think this was funny, though, this is the $10. So almost 300,000 people in the $10. K. Milner, Jr. put in 2 entries, and the one with 463 points got the job done. We'll go to it. It was a 49-5 lineup. It's built very nicely, obviously, and I love the build in general. We'll go to that in a second. But when we're switching back and forth here, this is the crazy part, Luch. I'll show it here first. When you type, you guys know this from watching the show in the past. If you haven't, it's very simple. When I start typing in K. Milner Jr., as close as I can get to it, it shows the lineups that they had. It doesn't link their name to it because we only show the username as far as it can go. I think it's the top 500. This is definitely their second lineup. It's quite different, and it definitely would not have won $1 million in any other tournament. Now, cue it up. They decided to only put one of them in the $100, and they picked the right one, which was $1 million and extra Tournament of Champions seat that they selected. I don't think anyone saw that on Twitter, at least from what I saw people mentioning. So to me, that's probably one of the craziest things I've seen. Again, not like they weren't already a millionaire. That's incredible. That's already a huge feat. Taking down a field of this size, and this is the WSOP main event type of thing. You have to hit good, build good, run good, everything, and you only got 2 entries. Call it one. I mean, out of that many, and then you pick the exact right one of the 2 and chuck it into the $100 as your second bullet and take this thing down for 2 millies. What do you think about that one, Luch?
when you're hot, you're hot. You know how much anxiety I get when I have like a 3-player swap, especially in like MLB when I'm secondary stacking. I'm like, well, I got to dump in another $200 and put this thing somewhere else so I don't leave money on the table.
Yeah.
That would have gave me crazy anxiety. Hey, good choice. I mean, I don't know. When you're running hot, you're running hot. I mean, the builds were really nice, and I like what he did. But yeah, I often think about the double takedown, whether it's the same sport or on both sites or something, whatever sport you're playing. But the takedown, both millies in one day, is borderline maybe one of the most historic things we've ever seen in modern day DFS, Tambo.
Yeah, you don't get very many opportunities, right? It's got to be a scenario like this. Like, it'd be cool if, during the PGA season, but it's so very rare, like where you'd see everything line up. You could have a milli maker in NFL and a milli maker in golf. Like, you don't have it. So it would kind of have to be in this sense. I know the Open has already posted GPPs on DraftKings, and they literally just copy and pasted. So it's the $10, 300,000 person, give or take, 25,000 in the $100, and it's the same 44, 6 or 700 or whatever it is there. So we get to run it back here in just 3 weeks from now, which I'm excited about. The next 3 or 4 weeks, I can't remember what it is. I know we've got the Travelers this week. Then there's some pretty boring events, but still a lot of money to be made out there in the streets. We'll definitely be looking at that. But let's hop into this here 2K Milner's lineup. As back to you, kind of your final point, you do got to be good to be lucky. So you got to have that spot where they picked the right one and got there, and that's how it goes. But this was the lineup, Luch, and I'll let you give me your thoughts after I read it out here. So Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, Louis O, Paul Casey, Brian Harman, and English. And I'm not sure if you have it up on your screen and you can see, but the ownership breakdown is there from each guy within the tournament. The salaries are there, what they used overall, the points they scored and put up, and how they got to their total that took it down. So if you've got it there, give me your thoughts on just the build, the construction, the salary left on the table, all those factors that you're thinking about when you're looking at this lineup.
I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised that just from an ownership standpoint, we're talking about over 100% of total ownership, which if you go back and historically look at, I would say 2/3 plus of milli takedowns in golf or tournaments of this size field, especially in the $10 with a couple 100,000 entries. You're going to look at some crazy stuff with like ownerships, 70% or less. I had no chance at making this lineup. I tried to keep my ownership under 70-75% as a whole when I'm playing in large fields like this. I just feel like that's longer term, positive EV here. But I'm looking at this team, and there's really nobody that I am looking at that I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, that's a little bit of more of a dart throw than usual. Like, Harris English played good golf since coming back. Brian Harman, we know what his recent form has been. And my buddy texted me last week and said, why does RG always like Brian Harman? Well, he's a grinder. He's a pit bull. And that's exactly what he did. Nothing super sexy, but didn't shoot worse than a 72 through 4 days. And at that price in this tournament where nobody was super low, I mean, that really helped there. So, there's nobody 1% to 2% or 3% owned in this team. Yeah, the chalkiest guy in the tournament in Xander, I mean, his price was great, rightfully so. But him coming in at over 30%, you probably had a lot of pros in the world just fade him from a game theory type standpoint when they take their stands here. So honestly, I love the build. I think a lot of them were quote unquote right plays, which rarely wins in a field this big. I mean, you had a guy like Husenhold on your team, who was coming through late, and there was no 1% guys here on this team that kind of came out of nowhere. So I'm a little surprised this thing won. I love the plays, I love the picks. He still had two guys sub 10%, so that kind of differentiated things, I guess, just enough here. But I guess I'm surprised a team with that combined ownership was able to do the damn thing. And congrats to K Milner. That's a sick lineup and a sick day.
Yeah, and I like a few of the points you brought up. Like, one, you can do whatever you kind of want as far as uniqueness goes once you leave $500 on the table, because we've seen in the past it's almost 80% of the field spends everything except $300, meaning they're 49.7 to 50,000. So there's that for starters. I can see that. But just back to your point, this is why you have to look at this both ways and be a little bit objective, because too many times I have people DMing me or texting me or whatever it might be saying like, oh, he's never going to get there as the chalk. Louis O, I'm pointing at Louis Oosthuizen. Sometimes it's just people catch up and that happens. And Xander, he had all these top fives. I know it's golf and anything can happen, so I'm not saying to go this way, and I'm not playing all this chalk. You'll see my lineups in a second. But what I'm trying to say, together at least, but what I'm saying is they don't miss the cut because they're 27% owned on DraftKings.com. That's my line that I always use. They also can succeed when they are 27% ownership. And Xander's funny because the minute he got into the mix and saw his name on the leaderboard, he went downhill too. But just back to this, just following it obviously heavily yesterday and going along with it, it was Fay money. and talk about some unlucky stretch, was winning this tournament by 35 DK points at one point. And then look at the Sunday, on Sunday, I'm talking about. Bryson, ejection. Morikawa, we talked about how rough his Sunday was, even for how good he was doing and hitting greens and having a good day. He wasn't scoring. Matthew Wolff blew up. And then obviously Mackenzie Hughes didn't do him any favors either. Louis down the stretch dropped down, so didn't end up with the winner when he probably had what we kind of thought, like between Bryson, Kawa, and Louis. I thought all those guys could contend and win this thing. And you had Mackenzie Hughes up there and Wolff to start the day. I wasn't as high on them, talked about that on the Showdown Round 4 show. But I mean, this is just the way a lineup can blow up in a heartbeat. Still only lost by 9 points, but that's got to hurt more when you were winning by almost 40 points at one point and looked like you were running away with it. It's the U.S. Open, man. Anything can happen. So I do like looking at that. I think, I'll go down now to mine here. And this is crazy. I know it was talked about a little, hey, shout out A-Hits Pat, my guy down there in 29th, but 31st place. I was looking at this one here. So this is what I was going to say is the Twitter conversation today was around the payout structure. And I said it is kind of brutal. I don't mind it that it's $1 million for first, especially in the $10. And that's the only way we're going to do this one. I would never expect them to change this one. What I do dislike is 21%. Like, why does the guy or girl coming in 62,500th place get some profit or even get their money back? Like, that's horrendous. You're in a tournament that pays $1 million for first. I know they have to do it to sell it out and get the numbers and all that, but I don't have to be nice to them on this one. I can have my own opinion, and that's where I'm at with that. The $100, and what we were comparing it to was tournaments like the WPT, the poker tour, right? Or if you go to WSOP, they did adapt. They used to be pretty top heavy, and then they went to say, why not pay less people? And my opinion was, why don't you just pay like they do? They pay around 12.5% of the field instead of 20 or 21. Like, this was 21% of the field gets paid. But you play to win. That's the whole point. When you get to the bubble strategy in poker, if you're just going to fold away for good hands, you're going to blind out and you're not going to have a chance. You got to take risks to be able to build your stack up to have a chance to get to that final table where the big money's at. It's kind of the same here, except we don't play the game that way. But my thought process would be, let's get if you want to reinvigorate cash games and get some more rake and have people go and actually care about cash games, tell them, look, you want 50-50 shot at getting your money back? Go play cash games. Tournaments are for winners. Tournaments are for top 12.5% getting paid. You're playing to win. And yes, it's huge up top, but there could be much balance. And this has nothing to do with my 31st place payout. I play to win. I really don't care about this. But I came 31st in this tournament out of almost 300,000. And I actually lost $100 on max entering this tournament. You'll see I had 150 builds here, of course. So this is the lineup anyway. That's my rant. Any thoughts on that before I go through the lineup? What are your takes on it?
You nailed it. And that's like a minor victory at this point. I mean, when you max enter all these sports and MLB, or not even max, put 100 lineups in something. I mean, there's a $5 knuckleball tonight, and I know more often times than not, I'm probably going to lose money tonight if I don't ship the thing down. There's going to be a point in the industry where push is going to be more than shove, right? Like, there's already a lot of conversation about the rake. We're seeing some contests not fill. I saw some tweets about a couple of Thunderdomes this week, and those are some of the best players in the world with the biggest bankrolls and the most money. Then you can't even get like a 6-person Thunderdome to fill. It's just getting worse. I've personally even started making bets a little bit more than playing a little bit more DFS, trying to just, like, in terms of profiting and additional income and in general making a little bit more money. And it's just been getting ridiculous. Look back 3, 4 to 5 years, Tambo, in many sports, and I'm a big NBA player, so I could use that for example. There were so many cash games. Not only did it cater a little bit more to the casual player, which was great, but you just had a chance to make so much more return on your money. And I just know there's still demand for cash games and double ups and 50-50s. And eventually there's going to be a breaking point. And I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe you'll see less users, whatever their analytics show on DK and FanDuel will become less active. And we're not there yet, but we're getting there. But
they're still filling these. So I'm not too concerned from that end, but I do think, like I said, what my opinion was they should make leave the $10 the same. Let people play it the way it is. I don't love it, but let them play it the way it is. I'm happy. This is whatever, right? You just move on to the next one. But the $100, I would like to see it a little bit more. We'll look at that in a second. But here was my lineup, Luch. We'll keep it rolling here. Like I said, it was a Rory Kawa, it was a Louis and a Casey, and then it was a Scott, who I actually thought, Noto and I thought he was going to be coming in much lower than this, even in the $10. I guess he is still a household name and did get a little bit of late steam, but I expected him to come in a little bit lower. And then Brandon Grace, and you might ask, you said, didn't you mentioned earlier, Bezuidenhout, I always call him Bezuiden Goat. I was certainly calling him that on Thursday when he was holding out from everywhere on the course. I was calling him Bezuiden Woat by the end of Sunday when he just destroyed me yesterday and ruined everything. But he was my leverage in that one. But in the $10, I actually like this lineup so much that I just duped it with the other South African because Higo had just won. I didn't want to play Higo, but I played both the South African inspiration plays in Grace and in Bezuidenhout, and I really did love the rest of this lineup. And I didn't expect Scott here, and Rory was still showing 8 or 9, so I knew these two would be popular, and I was okay with that, even Casey. But I figured, like, if you had 8% Rory, maybe 5 to 7% Scott, and I knew those guys would be super low owned. I assumed I would still be unique. I can look here. I highly doubt we were even close. This one was like a 3v3, but yeah, like no one duped it. So that was my lineup. It obviously didn't pan out in the end. Scott had himself a pretty rough Sunday. Can look at the pools, a different time. I just think just showing through it. But the one in the $100, I did the thing that K Milner did, and it did cost me about $13,000. We can flip over here and see the payout. I got 23rd here, and I had 59 entries in this one. And that, just so people know the random number, the goal was to be very budget oriented and do 50. As the week goes on, you just start pressing enter, enter, enter on certain lineups. I obviously didn't click the right one, but I clicked the Bezuidenhout one. I like him. I thought it was a nice build. I know that he's got the all-around game. It showed on Thursday and Friday. Even Saturday, he did his job. Going into Sunday, he looked okay and had nice leverage here. But just having these guys, there was some upside in Scott if he could have had a good Sunday. Rory and Morikawa were making moves. I just couldn't quite get there, man. But, yeah, this was $3,000. This one was 445 points and would have landed up here in a tie with these two. Well, a tie with Butch Husky, but in a similar spot here. He had the same lineup in both because he maxed 150 did. And, yeah, that would have been another 13,000 or just under, I guess, once you do the chops and all that. So what are your thoughts on my lineup there? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I really like it. And I think you constructed it pretty perfectly. Easier said than done. Xander per dollar was great. Obviously, you didn't have him there, but that's fine. And I think you kept the ownership about where it should be. Take one of these things down. I thought, Who's and Woat was great leverage, coming in under 5% there. Not having Xander alone was pretty, unique. You were able to have that mid-tier chalk, Louis and Casey, and feel comfortable with that. And I'm sure that was kind of your thinking point here, to not build them, with Xander, whose momentum was, you saw the ownerships creeping up throughout the whole week. So I thought it was pretty well done. And if you scroll to the top of the leaderboard, K Milner's team, great team, a lot of guys that were on my radar and your radar as well, and they scored the most points. That's how it works, right? Like you said, just because some guy's 30% doesn't mean he's going to miss the cut. That's basically like, Charlie Hoffman carried a lot of ownership, and in hindsight now it's like, oh, Hoffman was not a great play, but like that lineup was basically like a Hoffman swap away from one of these guys in 7K range for me, kind of being okay to using that team in cash, which is kind of funny, right? So sometimes playing optimally is the right call, and that was almost an optimal bill. The core four of Morikawa, Xander, Louis, Casey carrying a lot of ownership. It is what it is. But if you look at the second place team here, now that's a team kind of like more towards kind of how you constructed teams in terms of ownership, where we're kind of used to seeing these kind of builds take things down. Obviously, Patrick Rodgers had a bad round 3, but you have Rodgers at 1% to really give yourself some leverage. The Cali kid plays good out there. Had a pretty good tournament, all things considered. You scroll down to third. You have 3 guys under 2.5% or left. What is it? Hit big, his 5th entry there. So kind of an anomaly for Milner here, and his high ownership, but it really worked out for him. But you see some of these builds with the lower owned guys, more oftentimes than not, is the way to go in these large field type of tournaments.
Yeah, one thing that stood true as well, at least with the winner with K Milner, was another thing I talked about last week is just there was much better names in the bottom, so I was okay with going a little bit more stars and scrubs. But I'll go back to the $10 for a second. I thought that's where you were originally. I was looking at just comparing some stuff. And one is the really balanced build took it down. Nowhere near a 6K guy was even needed, right? You could have went there, but and some got there with that and got it near the top. But this is just, that could have been here, that could have been here or there. Like they could have won. Obviously, they're 1 or 2 shots made away. But just looking at it, like even this, so this build's a 9K, a 9K, an 8, and 3 7s. Love it. This build was kind of what Noto and I talked a lot about. I said this would probably be likely to what you'd see win. One of the guys up top somebody in the 9K range. Could have been Xander, but there was other guys there with Morikawa, Reed, X, all the other dudes we talked about, Rory, JT, whatever you wanted to do there. We thought this setup, but then we said, why not sneak in like Louis or maybe 2 8K guys? Because Casey could have just as easily been an 8K guy, and this could have been a 7K guy or whatever. There's lots of ways to go about it. But again, not needing to go down to the 6K range. This one here, even with John Rahm and 2 8K guys, you could still fit in 3 7K guys. And I actually like this build quite a bit. And they had the money here if they wanted to go a bit of a different way for like a $7,500 golfer, or there was other ways that you could have shaken this one out and got to it, and they still almost won. They were literally right there, and still a great $50,000 week. So, and then when you go back to what you were just looking at, this is where you'll see, okay, Patrick Rodgers realistically was the one that did let it down. So that's being results oriented, but just to say it here, yeah, Guido was an awesome pick, but then you had to stack it with another one, and that's what brought you down. So it was really tough for me, and that's what I kept saying to Noto on the Wednesday show, to not just see lineups with 7K guys. Like this one, I love this build. Alex, man, RG member, nice 150 max here, 73, 79, 81, 84, 88. And you're telling me Colin Morikawa couldn't have won that thing? I think he should have yesterday. The way he hit those greens, the way he played, he just didn't make those putts. And that's what the MO is. It's funny there's an MO in Morikawa, because his MO is not being able to make putts. But when he does make putts, he wins or likely wins. And he's already got a major, a WGC, a PGA Tour win, playoff losses, wins, etc. Like he's got everything that you can think to add to your resume for this early in his career. He's had Tiger vibes as far as comparisons go. For the new age, no one's ever going to be a Tiger because the competition level of what we have now. But for how solid he was, the cuts he was making, just everything that came out was very Tiger-esque. And at 9,500, we thought he was underpriced. I liked him and Hovland better than Xander. Hovland didn't work out. Morikawa did. That's what I'll say, and that's where I'll leave it. But I just, certain plays, certain times. The Louis train will be interesting for the Open, because that's his spot. That's where he literally has his major win. And you know he's going to be priced to like 84 or 85. They'll go up some, but they're not going to go up too far. But then he's probably still going to come in at 20% again, because people will just assume the automatic second. And maybe, I don't know for sure. Probably not, but that might be the time to jump off. Any other final thoughts, man? We kind of want to just do a fun, quick show, reviewing everything that we could here to go through it. But anything else that you want to talk about for this week, for this tournament?
I think just some interesting numbers is there's only 4 guys in the top 35 that lost approach strokes throughout the tournament. One of them was Patrick Rodgers. One was JT. Patrick Cantlay was the third, and Adam Scott, who gained some late steam, we talked about, who played pretty well, all things considered. Hasn't played a lot over the last couple of months, but, strokes gained approach. I mean, you're playing good golf when your approach is on, and that's kind of why everybody uses that metric and weighs it as heavily as they do pretty much from week to week. But hey, death taxes and Colin Morikawa's approach game, almost 8.5 strokes gained. I think he led the field again. I might be wrong there, but John Rahm as well, 6.5 strokes gained. And, don't look now, Daniel Berger, 6.5 strokes gained too. So those are just, kind of my final thoughts here. It was a fun week. The Brooks Bryson drama, didn't really get that Sunday. Those people in that corner wanted from the Brooks Bryson thing, but both guys showed a lot of grit, played good golf for probably like 3+ rounds each, and it's good. Dustin Johnson, all things considered, was okay. So it's good for the game to see DJ and Koepka trending well and, moving into another major in just 3-4 weeks. I'm looking forward to them hopefully contending and making the game, continue making the game great.
Yeah, a lot of people are trending well. Like you said, the ones that'll be forgotten were the DJs, the Spieths, the JTs. Like, it's not like they were completely out of this thing. They were, based on how the winner went down, and where Rahm is just on a next level, at least, what he's been lately with the Memorial before the COVID withdrawal after 3 rounds, and then this tournament. But these guys didn't play like their best game either. So when you think about them being able to bounce back, the Open is going to be truly exciting. Wide open field there. I'll round it out and just say this. Like, if you look at some of the chalk here, what we call chalk, at least the highest owned guys, Xander, we know, kind of came through in the end. He ended up on the lineup, but yeah, like we said, Morikawa beat him. Morikawa wasn't that far behind, but he was really far behind in the spirit of ownership. And we kind of knew that. That's why I said, sort of any high dollar you're in, I would look to pivot. And if you went to Hovland, like me in most places, unfortunately that did not work out. 7 total points on the week. But I said all week long, I like the 2 guys right around Xander. Those were the 2 there. Finau disappointed. I guess that's a takeaway. Has played really well here. The guys that played well here, so Finau, Leishman, I think Bubba, those 2 sounded good. Like Bubba made a run, but then it completely disappeared. So it's like they just actually didn't play well in the major setup versus what they've played well here in the past. But then you could argue the other side of it. Well, Rahm won his first tournament here, PGA Tour event. Now he's won his first major here. You know, all the factors that go in with it. So going down, I guess Hoffman made the cut but didn't come through. Willie Z certainly hurt me in another few places. But like you said, most of these guys played pretty good, or at least put up a chance for you. So it wasn't a tournament to shy away from the chalk. You just had to find ways to get different, like we just showed in a couple spots. So kick it back one more time. Any final thoughts, and then let the people know where they can find you, Luch, and I'll take us home.
Yeah, one guy who I had a little bit of exposure to, and I wish I had more, and I'm really impressed with. He led this field in putting, which doesn't always bode well moving forward. But Scotty Scheffler, still gained almost 4 strokes approach. Gained tee to green strokes. Was kind of in that price range where there were more attractive or safer options, I guess you could say, with Scheffler's open history, 2 missed cuts and I think a 27th. Here's a young guy who, look at his recent performance. He's trending in the right direction. And I think going into the Open, he might even be a little bit unnoticed, quiet top 10 from Scotty Scheffler. I think his time's coming sooner than later. And, I'm excited for Scotty Scheffler. His game looks really good. I know, putting kind of saved his ass, I guess, this tournament, but, he's really been getting it done lately. So hit me up on Twitter at the J Carlucci. We'll be on together for a couple more NBA, probably showdown shows moving forward. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of these golf tournaments coming up in a few weeks.
You bet, man. It was awesome. Good to do this with you again. The Scotty Scheffler point is right. He's been knocking on the door at these big boy events. He didn't get to play in the Bryson winning U.S. Open because he actually tested positive for COVID right before, so he had to miss that one. This was his bounce back, and at the last, I think now 5 majors, he's got top 20s or better. So he's someone to watch, and some of the people don't really like coming around to when his price tag is at 8,500 or somewhere in that range when you've got all these other good golfers around him that it's hard to really pick and choose your spots, but he's certainly a guy to keep an eye on. You guys know where to find me on Twitter at ToeTagginTambo. Hit me up there if you have any other questions. Other than that, thank you and good luck.